It wasn't raining that morning, but it felt like it should have been. The clouds hung low over the trees, heavy and silent. The streets outside my apartment were half wet from last night's storm, and everything smelled faintly of soaked dirt and rotting mangoes. The kind of morning where the sky feels bruised, like something just happened or is about to. I hadn't planned on waking up early. I never do. But something felt off. You know that feeling when the world shifts ever so slightly, and you can't quite name what changed, but your chest knows before your eyes do? I checked my phone. 4 missed calls, all from an unknown number. No voicemail, just silence, and then a message. Your sister's in town. She left something for you. Come to the old house. I stared at the text for a long time, even though the words weren't that complicated. I just wasn't sure which part of it was real. Let me explain something first, so you know what kind of story you're getting into. My name's Rui. I'm 27 and I haven't seen my sister in 9 years. Her name is Hana. She left Heian in 2016, right after our parents died. No warning, no proper goodbye, just one long argument, a slammed door, and her shadow stretching down the graveled driveway as she left me standing there with half a sentence still stuck in my mouth. She never called after that, and I never chased. The old house mentioned in the text could only mean one place, our childhood home, the one on the edge of the river tucked behind the abandoned paper mill with the broken chimney. It used to smell like wet bamboo and rice porridge in the mornings. Now it probably just smells like rot and locked doors. I hadn't set foot in that house since I was 19, but that message it stirred something. Not panic, not even anger, just this slow, aching sort of curiosity, like seeing a photo of someone you forgot you missed. I grabbed my keys and walked out into the thick morning air. Heian was still waking up. The noodle cart guy waved. The old neighbor's dog barked once at nothing, then laid back down like even it didn't care enough to keep up the performance. It took 15 minutes to get there on foot. The road curved the way I remembered, but the weeds were taller now, and the air felt heavier. The gate to the house creaked open when I pushed it. Everything was exactly as we left it. The cracked flower pots, the dusty window panes. The wind chimes Mom made out of bottle caps still hung crooked above the doorway, moving only when they felt like it. And then I saw it, right there on the front steps. A box, not big, maybe the size of a bread tin, tied with a red string, no note. Just a single white lily laid across the top. My stomach turned, not in a sick way, more like something inside me recognized it before my brain could catch up. She used to pick lilies every birthday, every exam, every time she left town and came back for the holidays. They're the saddest flower, she used to say. Even when they bloom, they look like they're apologizing. I crouched and picked up the box. The string slipped loose like it had been tied in a hurry. Inside, a journal, soft leather cover, worn at the edges. Hers. I flipped it open. The first page read, "If you're reading this, I guess I ran again. This time it's not because I'm angry. It's because I'm scared. I don't know how much time I have left, Rui, but I didn't want you to find out from a stranger. So I left you the only way I know how. Quietly, cowardly, but with love. Start from the last page." I stood there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just held it. The wind finally picked up. The chimes rattled once. And for the first time in years, I stepped inside the house again. Not as the person I used to be. Not yet as someone who understood what this was all leading to. Just a brother, holding the first puzzle piece of someone I used to know. The floor creaked louder than I remembered. Maybe the house aged faster without people in it. I stepped inside like a stranger breaking in, not because the door was locked, but because the air felt too still, like the house had been holding its breath for years, and now it wasn't sure if it was safe to exhale. Dust floated in soft beams through the half-open curtains. The living room still had the old wooden chairs, the low table where Dad used to fall asleep reading the newspaper. I caught sight of a photo frame turned face down. I didn't touch it. In my hand, Hana's journal felt heavier than any book had a right to be. I sat down at the edge of the sofa. It sagged a little under my weight, and I turned to the very last page, just like she'd told me to. December 18th, 2024, Bangkok. I'm writing this in a hotel room that smells like mango soap and air conditioning. It's raining outside, which feels unfair, like the sky's trying to make this feel more cinematic than it deserves. I saw the doctor this morning. Stage 3. Liver. Months, not years. He said it slowly, like saying it gently would make it hurt less. I nodded like a good patient, like someone who didn't just feel the floor go missing. It's funny. The first person I wanted to call wasn't my boyfriend, wasn't my boss. It was you. I closed the book, not all the way, just enough to breathe. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until my head started to buzz. Stage 3. She was sick, and she didn't tell me. Not until now. Not until after leaving a note in a box outside a house no one had lived in for nearly a decade. Typical Hana, running away just slow enough to be found. I opened the journal again, flipping backward now, reading scattered entries, trying to make sense of her trail. November 2024, Hanoi. The food here tastes like our childhood. Fried tofu, pickled vegetables, that sweet egg dish we used to fight over. I passed a shop that sold old books and thought of you. I almost took a picture, but what would I say? Hey, haven't spoken in 9 years, but here's a book you'd like. Maybe you'd laugh. Or maybe you'd just delete the message before opening it. Another page, October 2023. Soul. I saw someone who looked like you. Same messy hair, same bad posture. I almost called your name, but I was scared he'd turn around and not know who I was. The further I read, the quieter the world around me became. Each entry was like a letter she never sent, like a version of herself she only knew how to share when no one was watching. Some pages were barely a sentence. Did you ever forgive me for leaving? I thought of Mom today. I hope she forgave me too. I heard your voice in my dream last night. You sounded older, sadder. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour, maybe 2. I didn't even notice when the cat from next door wandered in through the open door and curled up by the table like he belonged there too. At some point my phone buzzed. A message, unknown number again. If you've read the journal by now, you know where I went first. The train station. Platform 2. The bench where Dad used to wait for us after school. Start there. I stared at the screen. Start there. I almost laughed. She really planned this like the scavenger hunt. Of course she did. Drama queen to the very end. I put the journal in my backpack, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. The air outside had cooled a little, that pre-storm kind of chill. The river made soft sloshing sounds below the embankment. Someone was playing old folk songs on a speaker in the distance, and as I locked the gate behind me, I said out loud, "Okay, Hana, I'm listening now. Let's see where you're leading me." I hadn't been to the station in years, not since the day she left. Back then, it had felt bigger, like a whole city pressed into a single hallway of concrete and tired vending machines. Now it just looked worn, peeling paint on the columns, faded yellow lines along the platform edge, the same half-broken announcement speaker that always cut out halfway through every sentence. Platform 2 still existed, tucked between the freight track and the waiting area. But now it was mostly empty, the kind of place where slow trains stopped without anyone getting on. I stood near the bench, the one Dad used to wait on with, that creased paperback in one hand and an orange soda in the other. Hana used to sit beside him, kicking her legs like a child half her age. I don't know what I expected to find. A letter taped under the bench? A forgotten scarf? Instead, I found a paper crane, laid perfectly folded, placed neatly on the wooden slat. I hesitated, then picked it up. It had writing inside. Unfolding it felt like cracking open a memory I hadn't agreed to revisit. "You were 15 when you stopped calling me Jai." I pretended not to notice. But I did. Of course I did. I sat down, not because I was tired, but because her words knocked the strength out of me more than I expected. She was right. I had stopped calling her Jai, not out of rebellion, but because something in me started believing she didn't want to be my sister anymore. That year, 2013, had been the beginning of the unraveling. The year Mom started sleeping in the clinic more than she did at home. The year Dad lost his job and started drinking cheap Beiju in the afternoons. The year Hana began staying out past curfew and coming home smelling like smoke and other people's perfume. And I stopped calling her Jai. I sat on that bench for nearly 20 minutes. Then I heard someone behind me. Old sneakers. Familiar rhythm. I turned. It was Jun. Hair still too long. Hoodie sleeves pushed up like always. Holding 2 drinks. 1 orange soda, 1 iced tea. "I figured I'd find you here," he said, sitting down without waiting for permission. I hadn't seen Jun in almost a year. We weren't exactly close anymore, but he had been there for everything back then. The fights, the funeral, the fallout. We didn't need small talk. "She's back?" he asked softly. I shook my head. "Not exactly. She left me a journal and things." He nodded like he already knew. "She stopped by the shop 3 days ago. Said she was just passing through. Bought ramen, the expensive kind you used to steal from my shelf." I snorted. She always said the cheaper one tasted better. "Yeah, but she said this one reminded her of when she used to take care of you." I looked at him. "She never took care of me." He didn't respond, and that silence said more than any argument could. Jun reached into his pocket and handed me something, a train ticket. I turned it over. Departure. Heiyuan date, December 3rd, 2016 seat. 4A. My stomach twisted. "She left it on the counter," he said. "Said if you ever came looking, I should give it to you. You two were like fire and glass." He added after a moment, "You lit each other up, then cracked apart." I looked down at the ticket. 8 years ago. That was the last day she was in Heiyuan, really in it. Body, voice, name. After that she was a ghost, at least to me. I stood up and tucked the paper crane into my journal, then turned to Jun. "Thanks. You going somewhere?" "No," I said. "I think I'm staying right here." "She left more, I can feel it." Jun tilted his head. "You always were the stubborn one." I learned from her. As I walked back toward town, I passed the narrow alley behind the stationery shop, the one where Hana once hid for an hour during a thunderstorm because she was too proud to admit she was scared. She'd drawn flowers on the brick wall with chalk. Some of them were still there, faint, barely clinging to the surface. But there, the next location wasn't hard to guess. There was only one clinic near Heiyuan that Hana used to trust, tucked up on the hill, just past the red bridge, with the chipped white walls and the faded sign half swallowed by vines. She used to go there when she faked being sick during exams. I'd cover for her, say she had cramps or migraines. She'd spend the whole afternoon there, reading gossip magazines and texting boys she never mentioned by name. I almost turned around halfway up the hill. I didn't know what I was expecting. Some folder, a name in the register, but something pulled me forward. Maybe guilt, maybe the sound of her voice in my head, laughing whenever I got too serious. The bell above the door jingled when I stepped in. Same cheap ring tone. Same smell, disinfectant and stale air. Behind the counter was an older woman, white coat, thin glasses, a clipboard in her hand. She looked up. "You're Hana's brother," she said immediately. My heart stopped for half a beat. "She told you?" The woman smiled softly. "Not exactly. She used your name on the intake form." I blinked, but she turned and pulled out a folder from the counter drawer, flipped it open, pointed. "Patient name, Rui Lindab, not my date. Paris, allergies, penicillin notes, traveling, short stay, follow-up declined. She didn't want to be traced," the nurse said gently, "but she still used your name." That shouldn't have hit me as hard as it did, but it did. Even when she was hiding, even when she was dying, she still carried my name with her. I sat down on the little blue bench near the window. My hands were trembling slightly, not visibly, not enough to draw attention, just enough for me to notice. "She came in 3 weeks ago," the nurse continued. "Said she just needed painkillers. Refused blood work. Wouldn't let us admit her. Was she?" I couldn't even finish the question. "She was tired," the nurse said, "but still trying. She joked about the weather, smiled the whole time, but her eyes," she paused. "Her eyes were the saddest part." I looked down at my shoes. The floor had tiny white cracks in the tiles, like someone had once dropped something heavy. I imagined Hana sitting here, probably alone, biting the inside of her cheek the way she used to when she was scared but pretending not to be. The nurse walked into the back room and returned a moment later with a sealed envelope. "She left this with us. Said if you ever showed up, we should give it to you. Said you'd understand." I took it with both hands. The paper was smooth, untouched by time. On the front it said in her handwriting, "Do not open until after the river." I stared at it. "What does that mean?" The nurse shrugged. She was vague. "Told me to say something poetic, like the water knows when to let go." I thought she was joking. "She always talks like that," I muttered. "Then I hope you'll know when it's time." On the walk back I didn't open the envelope. I thought about the river, the one that ran behind our childhood home, the one she used to sit beside at night, tossing small stones and saying she was skipping memories. She told me once, if I ever disappear, look for me near the water. I'm not good with endings, but rivers are. I was starting to wonder if this whole thing, the journal, the letters, the crane, wasn't just her way of making peace with that. Maybe she wasn't running anymore. Maybe she was walking herself home. I passed the corner fruit stand, bought 2 mangoes, one for me, one for no one. Back home, I placed the envelope next to the box she left on the first day. Dodo, the cat, had started sleeping next to her coat now. I sat beside him, didn't speak, just held the mango in my lap and closed my eyes. For a moment the house didn't feel empty anymore. The river looked the same slow current, same brownish edge, same low gurgle where the stones broke the water's rhythm, but something about it felt heavier now, like time had soaked into the soil around it, like it remembered what I didn't want to. I walked past the broken swing, the rope still tied to the low-hanging branch. It had sagged a bit more since I last saw it. One good push and the whole thing would probably snap. That swing was hers. She used to sit there with her legs tucked up, pretending she was a philosopher, asking questions like, "If people can break without bleeding, how do you know when to say sorry?" And I'd say something stupid like, "You just do, or you don't, and then you regret it later." She never answered that one. I sat down on the dry patch under the banyan tree, opened her journal again. The pages fluttered like they were trying to find their place on their own. One entry caught my eye. September 2016, the night before I left. I almost stayed. I sat by the river with Rui. He didn't know I was saying goodbye. We skipped stones for hours. He said he hated me. He said I always left when people needed me most. But he also brought me ginger candy, and he waited until I got on the bus before walking home. That's what love looked like, I think, even when you don't say it. It was cold for September. We sat beside the river, her in that black hoodie that was too big for her, sleeves swallowing her hands. I was still in my school uniform, untucked, muddy at the hem. Do I know you? Not really, but I knew Hana. That made the air thicken instantly. I blinked, went off and on the past 2 years, she said, mostly in Chiang Mai. I was her neighbor for a while. We shared a balcony. She used to smoke too close to my laundry. A pause. She talked about you. What did she say? That you were angry, that she deserved it, but that maybe you'd forgive her if she didn't ask. I looked down at my hands. The coffee had gone cold. Why are you here? I asked. She asked me to come. She mailed me a list. Said I was supposed to find you, give you this. She handed me a folded sheet of paper, Hana's handwriting unmistakable. It simply said, Platform 3, July 2016. He won't remember it, but I do. I stared at it for a long time, then looked back up. Who are you? She smiled faintly. Lena. And you knew about her illness? She nodded slowly. I knew when she got the scan. I drove her there. I held her hair when she threw up after her second hospital trip. I argued with her when she refused to tell anyone, especially you. Why? I asked. Why hide it? She said dying was easier than explaining. That hit like a dull blade, not sharp, but deep. Did she know how much that would hurt? I asked. Yes, Lena said. But she also knew you'd follow the trail anyway, because you were always the kind who reads until the end. We sat there in silence for a while. Lena sipped her tea. I picked at a crack in the table's surface. There's more, she said eventually. She left something for you, but not yet. Another clue? No, Lena said, shaking her head. A decision. For later. I didn't understand, but I didn't push. Outside, the rain had slowed to a whisper. Lena stood. If you want to talk, she said, I'm staying at the inn by the river, room 6. Are you here until it ends? She tilted her head. No, just until it begins again. Then she was gone. I sat with her note for a long time. Platform 3, July 2016. A memory I apparently forgot. I'd have to go back there again. The station looked different in the morning light. Not cleaner, just quieter. Like the ghosts had gone to sleep. Platform 3 was always the loneliest one, the least used. The one where empty trains waited longer than they should, as if hesitating to leave. A place that never really belonged to arrivals or departures, just somewhere in between. I stepped onto the platform slowly, my shoes scuffing against the wet concrete. The paint along the edge was chipped, flaking off in long, brittle curls. I didn't remember ever standing here in 2016, but Hana did, and she'd written it down. So I waited, not for a train, for a memory. It came slower than I expected. A smell first, steamed bread from the vendor cart, mixed with the soft sting of wet steel and sunscreen. Then a voice, younger, sharper than mine now. You don't have to come, I had said. We were standing exactly here under the metal awning, watching the July rain blur the trees in the distance. Hana was dressed in a black shirt 2 sizes too big for her, denim shorts, and those ridiculous silver flip-flops she always wore too early in the season. She tilted her head toward me. Why not? I shrugged, keeping my eyes on the tracks. It's not like you care about my entrance interview. You didn't even know I applied until last week. I found out late, she said. Doesn't mean I didn't care. You're always late. She exhaled slowly. I'm trying. For what? For me, I shook my head. You're leaving again. I don't even know where you stay anymore. I know, she said softly, and then silence, not the kind filled with tension, the kind where both of us knew we'd said enough, but it still wasn't what we meant. She stepped closer. I remember the sound of her flip-flop smacking lightly against her heel. I'm proud of you, she said, even if you hate me right now. I turned to her. I don't hate you. You just don't like me. No, I said. I just stopped waiting for you to come back. Her mouth parted slightly as if to speak, but she didn't. Instead, she reached into her tote bag and handed me something, a train ticket. Heian Arrowshun departure, July 9, 2016, 11:45 a.m. seat, 13C. I frowned. This isn't my train. I know, she said. I looked up. Then what? I bought 2 tickets. One for where you're going, she said, and one for where I thought we could go together. Why? Because it might have been the last time, she said. I wasn't sure back then, but I wanted to try one more version of us. My throat tightened. I remembered this now, not the words, but the ache, the way she looked at me, like she already knew I'd say no. I can't, I told her. She nodded. I figured, and then the train came, and she stepped back, and I got on. No hug, no goodbye, just space, just the platform. Back in the present, I sat on the same metal bench, the rusted edges dug into my palm. It had stopped raining. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her most recent note, the one Lena gave me. He won't remember it, but I do. She was right. I had forgotten it, not because it didn't matter, but because it mattered too much. The sun broke through the clouds. Thin light poured across the rails. I stayed seated, watched 2 sparrows fight over crumbs near the edge of the tracks. A teenage couple walked past, laughing, sharing earbuds. The world was still moving, even when mine wasn't. Somewhere behind me a train horn echoed, not hers, not mine, but someone's. And I found myself whispering into the still air, I should have gone with you. I hadn't seen Miss Cowan over a decade. She used to teach watercolor out of a converted rice storage room behind the bakery. I remember the heavy smell of glue and pigment, the sharp snap of cheap brushes, the way she always tied her apron too high on her waist. Hana was obsessed with her, not because she was kind, she wasn't, but because she was blunt in a way that made people either quit or get better. I stood at the door of her studio, not sure if I was more nervous about what I'd find or whether she'd recognize me. She did, almost immediately. "You're Rui?" she said, no question in her tone. I nodded. "Do you remember me?" "I remember your hair was shorter," she said, tilting her head, "and you used to sulk more." I gave a short laugh. I'm trying to keep the sulking internal these days. She didn't smile, just stepped aside. "She said you'd come," Miss Cow said, leading me past half-finished canvases and shelves full of clay test pots. "She always said things like that," I muttered. The studio hadn't changed. Same cracked linoleum, same paint-streaked stool in the corner. The air smelled like turpentine and fruit tea. Miss Cow pulled out a drawer from one of the filing cabinets, set a sketchbook on the table between us. She left this here the last time she visited. Said if you ever came asking to let you look. My fingers hovered over the cover. It was soft brown leather, the edges worn smooth. I opened it. The first page was a sketch of our childhood home, accurate down to the crooked antenna and the broken tile on the 3rd step. The second page was me, not now then, 15, slouched, scowling, wearing the shirt I wore too often and the sneakers I refused to throw away. My expression was wrong though, too sad, too soft. "She drew me wrong," I said quietly. "She drew you how she remembered you," Miss Cow corrected. "Memory isn't a mirror. It's a hand tracing over fog." I turned the pages slowly. Dozens of drawings, all of me sleeping on the train, reading at the window, crying maybe, or just looking out of frame, lost in thought. And then her, only one, the final page, a self-portrait, half finished, her eyes detailed, intense, the rest just outline, no color, no shading. Beneath it, scrawled in pencil, "If I finish this, I'll have to say goodbye." My throat closed up. I pressed my hand flat against the page, as if that might press her back into the world with it. She said drawing was her way of remembering things better than they were. Miss Cow said, watching me carefully. But I think this one was too honest. She was sick, wasn't she? I asked without looking up. Yes. How long did she know? A year, maybe more. She came back twice. Never said the word, but I could see it in her hands. In her hands? She stopped blending her strokes. The lines got harsher, shakier. She didn't want anyone to know. She didn't want you to know. Bye? Miss Cow shrugged. Maybe she thought you'd stop loving her the way she remembered. I closed the book. That's not how it works, I said. Miss Cow nodded. I know. But when you've lived most of your life feeling disposable, you assume love has limits. I stood to leave, tucked the sketchbook under my arm. Thank you, I said. Miss Cow's eyes softened just enough to remind me she wasn't as hard as she pretended. She loved you more than she knew how to admit, she said. She was always better at drawing feelings than saying them. Then maybe, she said, this was her way of talking to you. Outside, the wind had picked up, leaves scattered across the alley like the start of something unfinished. I walked home slowly, not because I was tired, but because I wasn't ready to stop holding something she had once held. It had been 3 days since the art studio. The sketchbook sat on my desk, unopened, as if the act of looking again would make the final page disappear. I hadn't been sleeping well. Dreams came in flashes, mostly vague impressions. Train doors, mangoes, her voice saying my name like it still belonged to me. That night I sat on the edge of my bed, scrolling through my old call history. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Proof she had called, a timestamp, a reason. Then I found it. Voicemail #27 date, December 31, 2024 duration, 046 contact. Jai. I had never deleted her name. In my phone, she was still Jai, older sister, the one who knew things first. I stared at the screen for a long time, 46 seconds. She had left it on New Year's Eve. I hesitated, then hit play. Her voice filled the room, soft, tired, a little hoarse. Hey Rui, I know you don't pick up anymore. That's okay. I didn't want this year to end without saying something. I felt my stomach tighten. I watched the fireworks alone tonight. I mean, not totally alone. There were strangers around. A dog tried to eat my rice ball. I think he won. A breathy laugh, then a pause. Anyway, I was thinking about you, about when we watched the countdown from the roof. Remember, you said it was the only time the sky apologized for how dark it got. I did remember. I had said that, but only once. I'm sorry, she said next. The word was so quiet I almost missed it. For not staying, for not explaining, for making you carry the silence by yourself. Another pause. Longer this time. There are things I can't fix. But if I could send you something, it would be all the versions of me that still knew how to stay. Just for a little while. I swallowed hard. Happy New Year, Rui. Be kind to yourself. I wasn't, but you can be. Tiff. The recording ended. I stared at the wall for what felt like an hour. There wasn't a single tear. No dramatic collapse. Just stillness, like the world was waiting to see what I'd do next. I played it again. again and again. On the third listen, I whispered. I didn't pick up, but I never stopped listening. Later that night, I took out a piece of paper, wrote 3 words across the top in uneven pen, letter #1 to the sister who left before I could forgive her and loved me anyway. I didn't finish it, but I started, and for now that was enough. The new owners had painted the walls white. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the missing wind chimes, not the rusted gate or the clean yard, just the blinding blank white that covered the stains of everything we used to be. I stood outside the gate for almost 10 minutes. It was mid-morning. Cicadas hummed lazily. The air smelled like laundry detergent and slightly burnt rice. The woman who lived there now, her name was Mrs. Jang, stepped outside with a pair of damp pillowcases. She squinted at me, then lowered her voice. "You're Rui, aren't you?" she asked, arms still full. "I am. She said you'd come." "Of course she did." Mrs. Jang was kind enough to let me in. Her daughter, maybe 8 years old, was watching cartoons in what used to be our living room. The kitchen was spotless. New tile, better lighting, less grief in the corners. I asked about the attic. She hesitated, then handed me a key. She made me promise not to open it. Said it wasn't for us, just you. The attic stairs were narrow, the kind that creaked even under soft steps. Dust rose with every movement, as if the air itself hadn't been breathed in years. The moment I pushed the attic door open, it hit me. The smell, dry paper, old pine, and her, not her perfume. She never wore any, but the scent of sun-bleached fabric, graphite, and the faintest trace of ginger candy wrappers. Everything was exactly as we'd left it. The wooden desk we used to draw on, the mattress she used to drag up here in the summer to avoid the heat downstairs, the box fan with one broken blade. I stepped inside and sat on the floor, suddenly 10 years younger. Then I saw it, taped to the back of the closet door, hidden behind a sheet of newsprint, a small envelope, my name written in block letters, Rui. I pulled it free. Inside, a single photograph, a folded note, a cassette tape. I stared. Who the hell still used cassette tapes? I unfolded the letter. You found it. That's unfair. I wasn't ready, but I guess if you're reading this, it means you are. This place was ours. Even when I left, I never took all of me with me. Some parts stayed, like this. Like you, I hated that attic, you know. Too hot, too dusty, too many memories pressed into the floorboards. But I also loved it, because you were always one floor beneath me, pretending not to check if I was still up here. I was, always. I paused. My hand clenched around the tape. The photograph was of the two of us, maybe aged 10, standing in this very attic. We were both holding brooms like swords. Hana was mid-laugh. I was mid-swing. Dust danced in the sunlight behind us like magic. On the back of the photo she'd written, "We fought imaginary monsters, but I wish we'd talked about the real ones." I found my dad's old tape player buried in the far corner. Surprisingly, it still worked. I popped in the cassette and hit play. Her voice emerged, not like the voicemail. This time it was recorded in this very room. Okay, this is going to sound stupid, and maybe it is. But if you ever find this, Rui means I didn't make it. Or maybe I did, and you're just being dramatic. Either way, I needed a place to put the part of me that still believed you deserved more than silence. So hi, I'm Hana, your Jai, the storm in your breakfast. The one who always stole your last dumpling even when you wrote your name on the foil. A small laugh. I was sick. I knew it for a while, and I should have told you, but you looked so okay without me for once. I didn't want to ruin that. But now if you're hearing this, I need you to know something real. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I couldn't face being loved when I felt like I was falling apart. You were always the Lou Rui, even when you didn't know it. And I'm sorry, not just for leaving, but for making you feel like it was your job to hold it all." A long pause. You could hear her take a shaky breath. "Let go, Rui, not of me, but of the version of yourself that thinks you failed me. You didn't." Click, the tape ended. I sat there a long time, didn't cry, didn't move, just listened to the stillness, her absence echoing louder than her voice ever did. Then I stood, took the envelope, the photo, the tape, walked down the stairs slowly. Outside, the little girl was still watching cartoons. Mrs. Chang stood up as I passed her. "Did you find what you needed?" "No," I said honestly, "but I found what she left." The tea stall hadn't changed, still tucked between the overgrown fence and the little barber shop with the faded spinning sign, like time had skipped this corner of town entirely. I almost didn't recognize her. Yui. She was sitting at one of the metal tables, scrolling through her phone with one hand and sipping cold chrysanthemum tea with the other. Her hair was longer now, curled softly at the ends. But the moment she looked up and met my eyes, something clicked. We had grown older, but not apart in the way strangers did, more like clothes that had shrunk in the wash. Same fabric, different fit. She raised an eyebrow. "Rui Lin," she said, drawing my name out like a punchline. "Now there's a face I thought was fiction." I gave her a small smile. "Hi, Yui." She set her cup down and leaned back. "You're still tall." "Act disappointed." "You're still blunt." "It's my only charm." Her voice softened. "Sit." The seat was warm from the sun. A breeze passed through the alley, fluttering a row of drying aprons on a line behind us. "I heard you were back," she said, "through Miss Cow and Lena. Of course. She said you're following Hana's trail." Yui added after a pause. "That true?" I nodded slowly. "She left things, loose pieces." Yui let out a soft sigh, less annoyed and more exhausted. "Everyone thinks when someone dies we just remember them," she said. "But sometimes we have to relearn them first." I stayed quiet. She stirred the melting ice in her glass with the straw, watching it swirl. "You know," she said, "you weren't the only one who lost her." "I know. Do you?" Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. "Because when she left, you stopped showing up too." I shifted in my seat. "She was everything," I said. "And when she disappeared, it felt like the part of me that could talk to people vanished with her." Yui nodded slowly. "I get that. I really do. But we were still here. I was still here." Her voice wasn't angry, just tired, sad in a way that sounded practiced. "I used to text you," she said, "on your birthday, on hers. I stopped when it felt like I was writing into a grave." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it, fully, sharply. "You don't need to be," she replied, softer now. "I just wanted you to know that grief didn't make you disappear. You chose to." I swallowed hard. "It wasn't that I didn't care." "I know," she said. "You just didn't know how to show it." The stall owner came over with a new tray of tea. He smiled politely, then left without a word. Yui slid one of the cups toward me. "She really loved you, you know," she said, staring into her drink. "And not just in that way everyone assumed. She loved you like you were the safest place she'd ever ruined." That hurt, but it was true. "She ever tell you that?" I'd asked. "No," Yui said. "But she didn't have to. It was obvious every time your name came up, which, by the way, was often, even when she pretended it wasn't." I took a slow sip of the tea. It was sweet, floral, almost too warm. "I miss her," I said. Yui gave me a long, quiet look. "Yeah," she replied. "Me too." A group of kids ran past us on the sidewalk, shouting about something sticky and orange. The world, as always, kept going. Yui stood first. "I'm around," she said, slipping her phone into her tote bag. "You know where to find me this time. I won't disappear again," I said. She gave me a crooked smile. "You might, but now I'll know how to pull you back." As she walked away, I sat with the tea until it was cold, not because it needed to be finished, but because sometimes being still is the only way to feel who's missing. The road to the lake hadn't changed. Still uneven, still flanked by lazy bamboo on one side and cracked stone wall on the other. It used to feel like a secret path when we were kids, the kind only the two of us knew about. But that wasn't true. Hana had never brought me here, not once. She talked about it, drew it, skipped stones in the shape of its curve onto every school notebook she had, but she never brought me, and that absence it was louder now than any memory. I walked the last stretch on foot. The lake shimmered in the summer haze, wide, pale green, rippling slightly in the breeze. Dragonflies hovered near the banks. A group of middle schoolers were laughing by the dock, daring each other to jump in. Farther down the path a single figure stood alone by the water. At first I thought I was imagining it, but as I stepped closer the figure turned, and I stopped walking. It was Lena. She wore a soft gray hoodie, the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. Her eyes met mine calmly, like she'd been expecting me. "I figured this would be your next stop," she said. "Oh, she wrote about it a lot." I walked slowly toward her. "She never brought me here," I said. "She didn't bring anyone here. I only found it by accident." We stood in silence for a while, the kind of silence that didn't press on your ribs, just sat beside you gently. "She used to skip stones," Lena said, nodding toward the edge. "Said she liked watching the ripples stretch longer than the throw itself." "She ever talk about why?" Lena smiled faintly. "She said it reminded her of you." I looked over. "Of me?" She said you never just touched someone and left. You made everything move, even after you were gone. We sat on the edge of the wooden dock. The lake creaked beneath us. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in cloth, a flat, square box, the edges carefully taped. "She left this for you. Said to only give it to you after you'd been here." I took it slowly, peeling back the cloth like it might bite. Inside, a thin notebook handwritten. 2 train tickets dated a year apart. A dried, cracked stone, smooth, rounded, with a small white flower drawn on it in ink. I opened the notebook first. Her writing again, familiar though slanted. There were so many letters I never sent, some because I was scared, others because I was selfish. But this one is for the version of you that forgave me before I asked. "You're here now, aren't you? Then you saw everything, or maybe just enough. I didn't want you to follow me. I wanted you to live." I closed the book gently. My hands were trembling. The train tickets, one from Heiyuan to Chiang Mai 2022. The other from Chiang Mai to Heiyuan 2023. She was planning to come back, I said, my voice barely audible. "She did," Lena said, "but she stayed quiet, stayed hidden." Why? She thought she needed to leave something behind. Something good. I clenched the stone in my hand. "She should have told me. She knew it would break you." "It did anyway." Lena turned her head toward me, her voice quieter now. "Then maybe she knew you could survive the breaking." The sun was dipping low now, light skimming across the water. I turned the stone over in my hand. "She skipped this one," I said. Lena raised an eyebrow. "How do you know?" "Because it never sank. I tossed it gently. It hit the surface once." then again, but it didn't go under, just floated, like it wasn't ready to leave. I didn't speak after that. Neither did she. We just watched the lake, like Hana once had, like she wanted us to. I hadn't planned on leaving the country. I didn't even pack properly. 2 shirts, a phone charger, the notebook she left me at the lake, and the stone I still hadn't let go of. That was it. But something about seeing her tickets, about touching paper she once folded in half and tucked into her bag, it made the idea of staying unbearable. So I went. Chiang Mai was quieter than I expected. The old part of town still smelled like grilled pork and motorbike fumes, the streets tight with cables and shaded by thick trees. It was raining lightly when I arrived, not pouring, just enough to keep the sidewalks damp and the air sticky. The address Lena gave me was scrawled on the last page of the notebook. If you go, look for the red door. She never painted over it. The red door was chipped. A single crooked lantern hung above it, swinging slightly in the breeze. The number plate was missing, just a square patch of rust where it used to be. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. The door opened halfway. A middle-aged man with graying temples peered out. "Mr. Lin?" he asked, voice cautious. "Yes, she said you might come." His name was Aaron. He didn't smile much, but his voice had the kind of gentleness you don't expect until it reaches you. He led me up the narrow stairs without explaining much, only said Hana had rented the top floor from him for almost 2 years. She didn't like talking much, he said, but she always paid rent on time. Left tea by the door when I got sick. Drew my dog once. That kind of person. He paused outside a wooden door at the end of the hall. Room's been empty since March. He handed me a key. "If you find anything you want to keep, you should." Then he left me alone. The room smelled like her. Not perfume, not even hair, just her. Books and lemongrass. Paper and something faintly floral. Maybe that cheap lotion she used to steal from my side of the sink. It was a small space. One window, a folded futon on the floor, a desk covered in old teacups, and a plant I assumed had been dead for weeks. There were no photos, and just one cork board above the desk, pinned with grocery lists, sketches of street corners, and a single note in her handwriting: "Try again tomorrow." I walked the room slowly, ran my hand along the desk, sat on the edge of the futon, pulled open the only drawer. Inside I found a notebook, different from the others. This one was thicker, heavier, the cover stitched in worn red fabric. I opened it carefully. Inside, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me. "Dear Rui, I saw a boy on a bus today that looked like you. He was reading a book upside down. You always did that when you were pretending not to care." Another: "I ate mango sticky rice again. Still hate the texture, but I keep ordering it. Maybe just to feel something familiar." Another: "There's a festival tonight. Red lanterns everywhere. I thought of you when the sky turned gold." The entries weren't dated. They weren't even numbered. They just existed. Moments of her life written for someone who was never there. And still, somehow, every word felt like it was waiting for me. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the letters spread around me like a circle. Rain tapped against the window pane. The room was quiet, not empty. I picked up one more. "You were always the person I wanted to come home to, even when I had no home left." I closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks I let the tears come, not from pain, from recognition. Outside, the rain lightened, the city exhaled, and I stayed there in the red-doored room, surrounded by the echoes of someone who had loved me quietly, but completely. The smell of grilled pork skewers and fried banana blossoms filled the air. Music buzzed softly from portable speakers. Lanterns swung overhead, casting orange glows across old rooftops. I walked slowly, the kind of slow that looked aimless but wasn't. Her notebook was tucked in the inside pocket of my jacket, not because I needed it, but because I wanted her close. Hana had mentioned this market twice in her Chiang Mai letters. I come here sometimes to remind myself that life is happening, even if I'm not the one living it. There's a woman who sells tea and tells fortunes. She said I carried grief like an old umbrella, heavy but always ready. I turned the corner into the south lane of the market, past rows of silk scarves and blinking keychains, until I saw her. The tea stall was small, just a square table with a faded green cloth and an old iron kettle steaming gently beside a stack of mismatched cups. Behind it sat a woman, maybe in her late 50s, wearing a deep purple shawl. Her hair was pinned back with two silver chopsticks. She didn't look up when I approached, just poured hot tea into a tiny porcelain cup and slid it toward me. "She said you'd come," the woman murmured. The hair on my arms rose. The woman finally looked up. Her eyes were sharp, not unkind. She came here often, but never with anyone. I sat slowly. "You knew her well." "No," the woman said, shaking her head gently, "but I knew her clearly. She was the kind of person who only tells you the truth when she thinks you'll forget it." She pushed the tea toward me again. I took a sip. It was smoky, a little bitter. "She said you were the only person who saw her before she became someone else," the woman added. "That's not true," I said. "No," she asked. "Then why are you chasing her through cities she never invited you to?" I looked away. The lantern above us shifted in the breeze, making her face flicker in and out of shadow. "She used to sit here for hours," the woman said. "Didn't talk much, just watched people pass by, drew in her little book. Once she showed me a picture of a boy sitting on a rooftop with a thermos in his lap." My chest tightened. She said that was the last time she remembered feeling safe. I swallowed hard. "She was sick," I said. "I know." "She didn't tell anyone." "She told me." I looked up startled. "She told you?" The woman nodded, but not with words, with silence. There's a way people carry dying when they've already accepted it. She wasn't afraid of pain. She was afraid of permanence. I let out a slow breath. "She kept living like she still had time," I said. "Don't we all?" the woman replied. After a long pause, she reached beneath the table and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "She left this here," the woman said. "Told me to give it to a man who looked like the rooftop boy if he ever showed up." I took the paper with both hands, opened it. Inside was a sketch of the two of us sitting back to back, faceless, no expressions drawn, with a single sentence written below in Hana's neat handwriting. He never saw the whole picture, but he believed in it anyway. I looked up at the woman, eyes glassy. "She was right," I said. "She was," the woman agreed. "And so are you to keep looking." I stayed a while longer, watched strangers pass, listened to the lull of the market folding itself into night. Eventually I stood. "Thank you," I said. She nodded once. "Come back when you're ready to stop looking. I'll still be here." As I walked away, the night air felt lighter, like something had finally been set down. And maybe it was okay that I never saw the whole picture, because I'd kept believing in her anyway. The envelope had been in the side pocket of my bag for 3 days. I hadn't touched it, not because I forgot. I couldn't forget. It was heavier than paper, something solid inside. And Hana had written nothing on the front, no date, no name, just a tiny flower drawn in black ink, the same one she used to doodle in the margins of her school books when she was bored. That symbol, that stupid little flower, had haunted me for years. And now it was the only thing left between me and the end of the story. I sat on the edge of the bed. The fan overhead clicked softly, brushing warm air across my skin. The room was quiet, too quiet. I took the envelope out, held it in my lap. It didn't rattle. It didn't bend easily. It wasn't a letter. I tore it open. Inside was a small key, brass, worn, tied to a red string, and a single strip of notebook paper folded tightly. I unfolded it carefully. Her handwriting filled the center, smaller than usual. "If you made it here, you're ready. The locker is in Heiyuan Station, the east platform. I kept one last thing there, just in case. If you open it, don't look for answers. Look for the question. You'll know what I mean. No signature, no goodbye." Just her voice again, in the space between lines. I sat there for a long time. The key dangled from my hand, catching the light with each slow swing. What question? What was left to ask? Hadn't I already seen the worst? Hadn't I already understood? But something about the handwriting, the way she chose her words carefully, like each one could carry a different meaning depending on how I was feeling when I read it, made me hesitate. Hana had never been the kind of person to give answers. She always gave choices. I left Chiang Mai the next morning, didn't tell anyone I was going, didn't pack anything new, didn't sleep. By the time the train arrived back in Heiyuan, the city felt unfamiliar, like I was visiting it through someone else's memory. I walked straight to the station. The east platform was half renovated, brighter lights, new tiles, but the same faint smell of steamed buns and iron dust. I found the locker area tucked behind a corner convenience stall, where tired commuters scrolled through their phones and children slurped ice cream cones before they melted. There it was, locker 108. I slid the key in. It turned with a soft click. I opened the door slowly. Inside was a small canvas pouch, and inside the pouch a tiny handheld camcorder, old, familiar, the kind we used to play with when we were kids. It still had the little cloud sticker I'd drawn on it when I was 12. I stared at it for a moment, then sat down on the bench nearby and flipped open the screen. There was only one video, untitled, time-stamped, March 11, 2025, 2 weeks before her death. I hit play. The screen lit up with static, then steadied. There she was, sitting cross-legged on what looked like the rooftop of her old apartment in Chiang Mai, wearing a gray sweater, hair tied back in a loose knot, face bare. Her eyes found the camera, and for a moment she just stared. Then she smiled, not wide, not performative, just enough. "Hi," she said. I couldn't breathe. I wasn't going to record this. I didn't want to be remembered like this, like some final confession taped under bad lighting. But I guess I kept thinking, what if Rui doesn't understand? Not what I did, but why. So here it is. The question. She paused, looking down at her hands. "I spent so much of my life running, from home, from pain, from love, even from you. And I kept telling myself it was for your own good, that you'd be better off not carrying the parts of me I couldn't carry myself. But now I think maybe I was just afraid. Afraid that if you saw the whole picture, you'd stop seeing the good in me. So the question is, do you still?" She looked up again, eyes shining. "Do you still see me the way you used to, Rui? Do you still believe I was worth the love you gave me? Because I never stopped believing you were worth mine." The screen flickered. She gave a soft, lopsided smile, the kind she only used when she thought no one was watching. "If you're watching this, I guess that means you didn't stop looking. So thank you. Thank you for not forgetting me." The screen faded to black. I didn't cry, not this time. I just sat there staring at the dark screen, letting her words echo through the hollow parts of me. The question. It wasn't about her. It was about me. And I knew the answer. I hadn't sat on this bench in years. It was still uncomfortable. Thin metal slats, sun-warmed, painted over a dozen times. Still had that old sticker peeling off the side. The one we used to swear was shaped like a rabbit even though it clearly wasn't. This was where Hana and I used to wait every summer for our grandparents' train to arrive. We'd sit cross-legged, sweaty from the heat, sipping sodas and trading ghost stories until we saw the silver blur of the train slide in like a secret. She once carved her name into the bench with a hairpin. I reached under the lip now, brushing my fingers across the rough underside until I found it. The tiny groove of her name still there, still sharp. I pulled out my notebook, not the one she left me, not the red one. This one was new, blank. I took a breath. Then I started to write. Dear Hana, when I was 12, you dared me to eat a cicada wing. I did, even though it was gross, because you said it made me brave. When I was 16, you told me that love wasn't supposed to feel like drowning, but you never mentioned how often it still does. And when I was 24, you vanished. I thought you died. I thought you abandoned me. I thought I'd lost everything good that ever knew my name, but you didn't disappear. You just became hard to follow. Hana, I've spent the last few weeks chasing shadows of you through cities you called home and letters you never mailed. I met strangers who knew pieces of you I didn't. I found rooms you kept clean but empty. I found drawings that made me feel more understood than anything anyone's ever said to me out loud. I saw who you were and who you tried to be when I wasn't looking. I hated you for not letting me help, and I love you even more for trying to protect me. So here's the answer to your question. Yes, yes, I still see you the way I did before, maybe even clearer now. And no, you didn't ruin me, even though it felt like it. You didn't leave me behind. You left me a path. It was broken. It was painful. It was you. And I would walk it again 100 times because I loved you then. And I love you still, even if the version of you I loved is gone. Even if the version of me you knew doesn't exist anymore. Some loves don't fade. They just stop needing to be loud. So this is it. The letter I never sent. I hope it finds you somehow. Love, Rui. I folded the letter neatly, pressed it flat with my hand. Then I pulled out a small strip of red tape, the kind she used to seal her sketchbooks. I taped it under the bench, right next to the name she carved. I didn't cry, not this time. I just stood up, felt the sun on my back, and walked away, not because it didn't hurt anymore, but because it could hurt now without keeping me frozen. Because grief, I was learning, wasn't a cage. It was a door, and today I walked through it. I hadn't been back in over a year. The paint on the gate was still chipped. The garden was overgrown, but the old jasmine bush by the door was still stubbornly alive, full bloom, soft white petals brushing the edge of the porch light. I rang the bell. No answer. Then I heard it. The slow shuffle of indoor slippers across the hallway, the click of the front lock, the creak of the door opening halfway. My mother stood in the gap, hair tied back, wearing an apron. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at me like I was a ghost, or worse, a memory. You're thinner, she said. I gave a small nod. It's been a long few weeks. Come in. The living room hadn't changed. Same floral curtains, same uncomfortable beige sofa, same smell of camphor and ginger tea. She poured 2 cups of hot water and sat across from me, knees tucked together, eyes wary but not cold. So, she asked. I saw everything I said. Her fingers stiffened around the handle of her cup. She came back. In March. She didn't tell me. She didn't tell anyone. You knew she was set? My mother exhaled slowly. I knew something was wrong, but not until she was already going. And by then she asked me not to call you. I looked up sharply. She asked you? She said she didn't want you to see her like that. said it would make you carry her ending instead of her life. I swallowed back the ache in my throat. That's not fair. I didn't agree with it, my mother said, but I honored it. There was a pause. Then she stood quietly, left the room, and returned with a small tin box, the one she kept old coins in when we were kids. She opened it. Inside was a single letter, unopened, worn at the edges, addressed in Hana's handwriting, but it wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to my mother. She gave this to me the day before she left. She said I never read it. I wasn't ready. Do you want to read it now? My mother looked at me. Then she shook her head. No, she said, but you should. I opened the envelope gently, trying not to damage the paper. Hana's handwriting hadn't changed. Dear Auntie, I've never been good at thank you letters. I always made Rui write them for both of us. But there are things I never said that I want you to know now, even if you never read this. You were the first adult who made me feel like existing didn't come with a price tag. I know I disappeared. I know it hurt. But please don't think it was because I didn't care. I cared too much. About Rui, about the both of you, about what it would do to him to watch me go. I'm sorry for leaving, but I'm not sorry for loving you all so deeply that I couldn't bear to take you with me. I hope Rui finds the version of me that laughed. The one who drew rabbits on train benches and made fun of his cooking. The version you both helped me become. Tell him I never stopped loving him, and that I didn't leave because he failed. I left because I couldn't ask him to watch me fall apart. Thank you for everything. Love, Hana. The letter shook in my hands, but I didn't cry. Not this time. My mother stared at me for a long while. Then she reached across the table and laid her hand gently over mine. She loved you, she said. I nodded. I know. We sat like that for a while, two people finally holding the same grief, instead of carrying it alone. And for once, I didn't feel like a boy haunted by what was lost. I felt like a man learning how to live with what remains. The red notebook was starting to fall apart. Edges curled, corners smudged. The spine cracked every time I opened it, like it was sighing. There were only a few pages left, but one had a loose tab folded into the corner marked in pencil, "Bus stop east of town, glass shelter, Beau alone." There was no date, no explanation, but I knew exactly where it was. It used to be our hideout. Before the new transit line was built, the old eastbound bus stop sat at the edge of a wide field covered in weeds and the sound of summer insects. It had a cracked plastic roof, a rusted bench, and a vending machine that hadn't worked in over a decade. It was where we'd run to when things got too loud at home or too quiet, where we sat on rainy days, watching the glass fog up while she sketched clouds in her notebook and I copied answers for tomorrow's homework, where we made up stories about the people waiting for buses that never came, and where I now realized she left something else behind. I biked there in the late afternoon. The heat had softened a little. The sky was streaked with pale gold, the kind of light that makes everything feel like it's waiting for you to notice it. The shelter looked almost exactly the same. I ran my hand along the metal beam, flaking rust onto my palm. The glass was still fogged near the top corners, not from weather but from age. I sat down on the bench, waited. Nothing happened. No envelope, no tape, no sketch under the seat. Just me, just silence. Then I noticed something etched into the inside of the glass, faint and barely visible in the light. Was a message, the kind you only saw if you looked from the right angle. She must have used the tip of a pin, maybe a key, maybe a nail. I moved closer, squinting until the letters revealed themselves. It wasn't addressed to me. It wasn't even addressed to anyone. It simply said, "If you're still here, it means you didn't give up. I hope you're proud of me, even if I didn't make it to the other side. I tried. I really did." The breath left my body like I'd been punched. I touched the glass. It was still warm from the sun, still holding her words like they were alive. "I'm proud of you," I whispered. I always was. The wind shifted gently. Somewhere a cicada buzzed its last cry of the day, and I sat there at the edge of the world we used to pretend was endless, facing a message she never thought anyone else would see. A message to the girl she hoped she'd become, but didn't. And somehow, it still mattered. It took me an hour to gather the nerve to reopen the notebook. I'd carried it like a second spine these past few weeks, pulled it out on rooftops, at lakesides, foreign train cars, and market stalls. But now, sitting on my own bed, in my own room, the familiar walls felt too close, like they might trap something in, or worse, let something out. I opened the red notebook slowly. Most pages I'd already read. Letters, fragments, sketches, thoughts meant for no one and every one at once. But toward the back, just before the final page, something slipped loose. It wasn't attached to the spine, just tucked in. A single sheet of sketch paper, folded once neatly. I unfolded it and froze. It was a drawing of me and her, older, maybe 5, 6 years from now. Her hair shorter, mine a little messy in the way that said I'd stopped pretending I could style it. We were seated on a porch side by side. My hand rested on her knee. Her head leaned against my shoulder. There was a house in the background, small, wooden, covered in vines. A cat slept near the steps. The kind of sketch that felt less like imagination and more like memory, but not one I recognized. At the bottom of the page, in tiny handwriting, she'd written, "What if I stayed? That's all." No date, no color, no answer, just the question. I stared at it for a long time, longer than I meant to, because that drawing didn't ache the way I expected it to. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like love, the kind that's soft, worn, unlived. And then suddenly I knew this wasn't a goodbye sketch. It wasn't part of her ending. It was something else entirely. It was a gift, a way of saying, "Look, I imagined us happy, even when her body was breaking, even when her days were counted, even when she knew she wouldn't get to draw it into life. She still gave it shape. She still believed in it, in us." I held the paper to my chest, not because I needed to protect it, but because I needed to feel the weight of it, proof that somewhere inside her, even at the end, she hadn't been all sadness. There was hope still, even if it lived only in ink. Later that night I pinned the sketch to my bedroom wall, right beside the calendar I hadn't updated since June. Then I sat down at my desk and began to draw. Not her, not me, just a window, sunlight spilling through it, and a breeze carrying petals into the room. A beginning. I wasn't going to go. I told myself I'd said enough, felt enough, cried enough, that the story was already finished. But stories don't end just because you close a chapter, not when there are still people reading it. Hana's university was holding a memorial exhibition, not a funeral, not a ceremony, just a room, quiet, full of her sketches, her journals, a few of her short films projected on loop in a side gallery. Lena sent the invitation weeks ago. She didn't text to follow up. She didn't have to. The exhibit was held in a small gallery space on the second floor. White walls, soft lighting, the kind that made the air feel sacred without trying too hard. A printed plaque by the door read, "What we leave behind, the works and wanderings of Hana Lin 2025." Just seeing her name spelled out like that made my stomach clench, not because it was painful, but because it was final. And still I walked in. They'd arranged her sketchbooks by season. Spring, delicate charcoal flowers, people in cafes, girls dancing in rain. Summer, color pencils, messy lines. feet in riverbanks, rooftops, fireworks, autumn, heavier ink strokes, and old faces, self-portraits with no eyes, winter, empty spaces, sparrows, hospital rooms, unsent letters, and beside each display a small note card with a quote in her handwriting: "There is no such thing as wasted love. I draw to remember who I am between other people. Silence is not absence. It's just another way of being here." I felt a lump in my throat that I didn't bother to swallow. In the far corner of the gallery someone stood staring at a framed piece, a watercolor of a train window painted in Hana's last year. The woman looked to be in her 30s, short hair, worn sandals, a scarf wrapped around her wrist like a bracelet. I almost walked past her until she turned and said, "You're Rui, aren't you?" I froze. Yeah, sorry, we haven't met," she said, offering a small smile. But I knew Hana a little. I was one of her professors. I nodded. She didn't talk about school much. She didn't talk much at all. But when she did, it stayed with you. She reached into her bag and pulled something out. A letter, old, folded neatly, the edges slightly frayed. "She sent this to me after her first semester," the woman said, out of nowhere. "I wasn't even her advisor. She just felt like she needed to say it. She handed it to me. I think you should read it." I opened the letter slowly, carefully. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Professor John, you probably don't remember me. I sit in the back. I don't raise my hand. I always forget to staple my assignments. I just wanted to say thank you for the thing you said on the first day of class about how art doesn't need to be loud to be meaningful. I didn't know that. I thought quiet people didn't get to leave anything behind. But that day you made me think maybe I could too. I don't have a lot of people to thank, so I wanted to say it while I still could. Thanks for seeing me." Hana and I stared at the words. Tears blurred the ink before I could stop them, because here it was, her first letter, not to me, not to family, but to someone who, just by saying one kind thing at the right time, gave her permission to believe she mattered. The professor touched my shoulder gently. She changed the way a lot of us teach, just by existing. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "She didn't leave nothing behind," she added softly. "No," I said. "She left everything." I walked out of the gallery just before sunset. The light on the stairs looked almost painted, golden and uneven and beautiful in that accidental way. I stepped into it, let it warm my skin, and thought, she did get to leave something behind, even if it wasn't loud, even if it was just a feeling in the people who knew her, even if it was just me. A package arrived 2 days after the exhibition. No return address, just my name printed in all caps, the handwriting unfamiliar. Inside the padded envelope was a USB drive and a short note. This was found in Hana's university archives. No title, no metadata, just a timestamp, March 8, 2025. You'll know what it is. Lena, I plugged the drive into my laptop. There was one file, a video, exactly 12 minutes and 47 seconds long. No label, no intro, just black screen, and then music. Soft piano, loops in minor keys, the kind of melody that sounds like memory, and over it her voice. When I was little, I thought people only disappeared when they ran away. Now I know sometimes they disappear when they stay. They get quieter, smaller. They fold themselves up to fit inside what other people need from them until you can't see them anymore. But I want to be seen, at least once. Before I go, the screen faded in slowly. A handheld shot, blurry at first, then clearer. She was walking down the narrow hallway of her old apartment, camera tilted down toward her bare feet. Outside, birdsong. Inside, silence. The next few minutes were scenes. vignettes, no dialogue. She filmed herself brushing her hair, watering her single dying plant, taping drawings to the wall, folding laundry while laughing quietly at something off camera, sketching a woman at a cafe, then giving her the drawing and walking away before she noticed. She wasn't acting. She wasn't trying to be beautiful. She just was. The kind of was that hurt to look at because it meant she had been. Then, halfway through, another voice cut in. Not hers. Not present-day Rui, but a much younger version. She must have kept one of the old recordings. From when we were 16. You always draw everything but yourself, my voice said. Why is that? Because if I draw myself, she'd replied, I'll have to decide who I am. Then it cut to a still frame, just her hand, reaching for the camera. And then static. Then silence. Then black screen again, and finally one last line of voiceover, spoken barely above a whisper. Where you end I begin. The video ended. My screen faded to black. But I just sat there, motionless, because for the first time I wasn't watching Hana to remember her. I was watching her to see her, clearly, truly, as she had wanted to be seen, and she had given that version to the world. Even if the world hadn't been ready for it then, even if only a few of us would ever see it now. It hit me quietly, like the end of a song you didn't know was the last track. This wasn't a goodbye. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the part she wrote after the ending. The part that said, I was here. I saw beauty. I made things. And I mattered. I closed the laptop, wiped my eyes, then sat back, letting the silence settle, and for once it didn't feel empty. It felt full. The house had been empty for years. Ever since Hana moved out at 17, no one lived there. Her father left shortly after. The roof sagged, the garden overgrew. The old wind chime she once made from bottle caps still clinked in the breeze, soft and stubborn. I wasn't sure what brought me here. There was no note, no map, no mention of the house in any of her letters. But I kept thinking about that video, that final line, where you and I begin. And suddenly I needed to see the place where she began. I found the spare key taped under the loose brick by the porch. Same spot we used as kids to hide candy from nosy adults. The door creaked open. Inside smelled like old wood, forgotten paper, and sunlight. Dust floated through the air like it had been waiting. I walked slowly, past the hallway where she'd taped her drawings, past the kitchen where we used to dare each other to eat raw chili flakes, past the bookshelf with her name carved into the edge in tiny knife strokes, and finally to her bedroom. It was almost empty now, just a broken dresser, a mattress with no sheets, and the closet door slightly ajar. I opened it. That's when I saw it, on the inside wall of the closet, where the hanging clothes used to be, carved gently into the wooden pencil, fading, fragile. One day I'll become someone who, and that's where it ended. No period, no finish, just those words. Like she stopped mid-thought, like she wasn't sure, or maybe she wanted to leave it open. I sat down, pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket, stared at the sentence, and for a moment I heard her voice. Not the whisper from her videos, not the laugh from her letters, just her. I've sarcastic. Right. What would you write? She would have asked, nudging me with her elbow. Don't make it cheesy. So I smiled a little and wrote carefully beneath her line, let herself be loved without shrinking. I capped the pen, ran my fingers over the sentence once, and stood up. Not everything needs closure, but some things do need witnessing. So I turned around, stepped out of the closet, and looked back at that small unfinished hope carved into the wall. One day I'll become someone who she didn't get to finish it, but I did, and maybe that's what love is. Not the saving, not the fixing, but the finishing when someone no longer can. As I left left the house, I didn't look back, not because I was trying to move on, but because I finally understood Hana wasn't a place I had to return to anymore. She was a part of the way forward. I hadn't planned to write anything. The red notebook sat closed on my desk, Hana's sketch still pinned to the wall beside it. The video, the gallery, the closet, they'd all happened. I had lived them. But some words don't come while life is happening. Some words only come after. I brewed tea, sat at the window, watched the city go quiet one floor at a time. Then I opened my own journal, not the red one, just mine, and began to write. No drama, no poetry, just the truth. Dear Rui, the one from 4 years ago, or maybe 10, or maybe just yesterday. You did the best you could, even when you had no idea what to say, even when you chose silence or anger or the kind of selfishness that looks like loyalty. You were trying to love her the way you knew how. That counts. You weren't too late. You didn't fail. Some people leave. Some people break. Some people can't carry the things we wish they could. And it's not your fault. She didn't leave because you were unworthy. She left because she didn't know how to stay. But she loved you all the way through. You know that now. And more importantly, you loved her. And you still do. But it's okay to stop punishing yourself for surviving her. It's okay to laugh again, to fall in love again, to live in a way that doesn't always hurt. This story didn't end in tragedy. It ended in love. Quiet, enduring, unfinished love. So be kind to yourself and go build the life she hoped you'd have. Because she didn't write all those letters just to be remembered. She wrote them to make sure you would keep going. So go, love someone, learn something, send your own letters. You made it. That's enough. Rui set the pen down, closed the notebook, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Not a call, not an apology, not even a sign, just stillness, and in that stillness, a strange warmth, relief. Not because I stopped missing her, but because I could finally miss her without breaking. The woman at the counter didn't ask questions. She weighed the envelope, glanced at the zip code, and said, "Domestic or international?" "Domestic," I replied, sliding a small smile across the counter. She nodded, printed the stamp, and handed it back to me. I stuck it on, dropped the letter into the red metal box by the exit. That was it. No dramatic music, no flash of memory, no whispered goodbye, just a letter and a mailbox. It wasn't addressed to Hana, not this time. It was addressed to someone new. Dear May, I hope this finds you well. I'm sorry it took me so long to reply. I wasn't ignoring your letter. I was just trying to figure out how to answer it without pretending I had all the answers. You asked me how I kept going after losing someone I loved. And the truth is I didn't, not really. Not at first. I stopped for a while, quietly, in ways that looked invisible from the outside. But eventually something opened. A door, maybe, a notebook, a window, someone else's words. And I stepped through. Grief doesn't disappear, but it changes shape. And sometimes it turns into a kind of love that doesn't need to be held anymore, just remembered. If you're afraid of forgetting her, don't be. You won't. Not really. She'll live in the way you walk, the things you notice, the jokes you keep telling even when no one laughs but you. And one day, not today, maybe not even soon, you'll find yourself loving something again. Someone, yourself, the sunlight through your kitchen window, a song you used to skip, and you'll realize you didn't move on. You moved with. That counts. With love, Rui, I walked out of the post office. The air was bright, not hot, not cold, just full, like the world had made space for one more breath, one more page, one more morning. I didn't look back at the mailbox. I didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time I wasn't writing letters to ghosts. I was writing to people still here, and maybe Maybe that's how you know healing has begun. Not when the pain ends, but when the love becomes light enough to carry forward. The notebook is closed now, not because the story is over, but because I finally caught up to it. And the next part, I get to write it myself.